Make sure you hit a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Don't be Zion Williamson. Let's get it popping. Wait a minute. Wait. Oh, okay, I got it. Let's get it popping, ladies and gentlemen.
Charles Schwab is the largest publicly traded brokerage in the U.S.
It's an enormous business, $7.5 trillion of client assets.
Charles Schwab, often referred to as the discount brokerage king.
It was one of the first brokerages to offer discount trades for retail investors. And now it's expanded services across the finance sector.
I remember when Charles Schwab, or not even Charles Schwab, I remember when there was a litany. Look at me expanding my vocabulary. Y'all like that. I remember when there was a litany of different companies that they were competing once the e-commerce space and the online space took hold. What is now TD Ameritrade was E-Trade. You had Scottrade. Scottrade had combined with E-Trade at one point because I think that trades at that time was either $12 and then it got reduced to $5 and then it got reduced to free in order to compete with each other. And then later you had Robinhood and then Charles Schwab and Fidelity. They reduced their fees for you to be able to trade and all of that other type of stuff. So it's interesting to see how everything consolidates and how everything breaks down. But they have over $7.5 trillion in assets, right? And I would suspect that the majority of those assets is not just people going on and signing up for a brokerage account in order to buy and sell stocks. They also have gotten into and competed with Fidelity and being able to manage your 401ks and your retirement accounts, which is where a lot of these assets come from. But we're going to go ahead and continue to play the video because I need y'all to understand a lot of these companies and how they're playing a role in what society is being shaped in today, because it does what? Always come back down to the money.
It would be fair to characterize Charles Schwab as a financial services supermarket.
It even slashed trading fees to zero.
Why the heck would you give something away for free if you could charge real money for it instead?
But this behemoth is facing a risky financial environment.
Charles Schwab, 3 days of double-digit declines for the first time in its 36-year trading history. The collapse of SVB has investors nervous about firms that have big losses on bonds.
Schwab's huge growth also had its own consequences, and this is a huge problem.
Here's how Charles Schwab battled the ever-evolving financial services market from low fees to fintech. In 2022, Charles Schwab said they saw an all-time record financial performance, despite the bruising year for equity and bond markets, adjusting to the new post-pandemic normal. With $20.8 billion in revenue, Charles Schwab had a profit of $7.2 billion.
Now, again, for those of you that has just joined the Millionaire Morning Show and you catching up, because we've been doing the Millionaire Morning Show for a couple years now, revenue versus profit is two different things, okay? In a general sense, revenue is the amount of money that you generate. Profit is the amount of money that you keep after expenses, to just make it simple, okay? So, for example, a lot of people tap in with me and they say, Anton Daniels, yeah, man, I got a coaching call with you. And then we get on a coaching call and they say, yeah, I did a million, 1.2 million, 1.3 million in revenue, in gross revenue. And then I say, oh, okay, well, how much did you make in profit? $80,000. That means that they have a low margin, and the amount of money that they keep versus the amount of money that they have to spend is very, very big. And then we have to go through and we have to do a deep dive in how it is that they can cut costs, how they can do things more effectively, how they can increase that margin, how they can be more profitable. But to have over $20 billion in net revenue and then keep $7.2 billion in profit actually shows that they have a phenomenal business model. Let's continue.
And 4 million new brokerage accounts were created.
Over 50% of its net revenue is related to interest rates, and whether this is via net interest income or its bank deposit account agreement with Toronto Dominion Bank. About 20% of its revenue is from trading and commissions, and the remainder is asset management fees.
Privately owned Fidelity is big competition. It's the larger firm with over 45 million brokerage accounts, including 37 million retail and 8 million wealth management accounts.
Now, what is the difference, right? Because I've always known that Fidelity was bigger than Charles Schwab. And a lot of people don't really understand this, but Fidelity is privately owned. Let me rewind it for you so you can hear it, because a lot of y'all don't even know where your money is going and where it comes from.
From trading and commissions, and the remainder is asset management fees.
Privately owned Fidelity is big competition. It's the larger firm with over 45 million brokerage accounts, including 37 million retail and 8 million wealth management accounts.
Now, a lot of people don't understand this, because when I posted this, they said, well, how is Charles Schwab the biggest company? Well, it is the biggest U.S. publicly traded company. It is the biggest U.S. publicly traded company. Fidelity is a privately owned company. Again, a lot of you that are not familiar, you're not familiar with the stock market, you're not familiar with the trading companies, you don't understand exactly how money works. Well, what is a publicly traded company? For you, it's the ability to be able to buy into or invest in a company that you otherwise would not have had access to, like a Fidelity. Fidelity is largely their biggest competition. Fidelity does the same thing as Charles Schwab, except it's a privately owned company. Let's continue.
Whereas Charles Schwab has 34 million total brokerage accounts, some of which are retail, wealth management, and independent advisor accounts.
Charles Schwab is a powerhouse in the investment services industry, but it does compete with.
Joshua is saying he's saying he didn't even know that they were privately owned. Reven, I know, I'm familiar with it. I'm gonna be rocking out with it. I'm gonna read the super chat shortly. I'm gonna be breaking that down later on this week. I got you, Reven. I'm gonna get there.
Many other firms.
In each case, Charles Schwab competes with different facets of its business, including legacy full-service brokers and investment bankers like privately owned Edward Jones, Stifel, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and UBS. Not to mention the newer entrants, Robinhood, Ally Financial, and SoFi compete with Schwab in the financial tech, aka fintech, market.
So let me break something down for y'all, because I want y'all to really, really understand something, all right? And I want to get to this before we start to wrap up, because it's important for me to highlight this. The technology sector is combining with the banking sector, which is one of the reasons why I went into banking instead of going into the technology sector, because everything is going to be intermingled and mixed, right? So for example, earlier in my career, I flew out to Mountain View, California, and they had offered me a position with a large technology company, right? And when I started weighing the pros and cons, I had to figure out, did it really make sense for me to join this company and uproot my family and go over here, and then my standard of living is reduced? Or can we transform these legacy companies into technology companies, because that's where all of the money is? And so that's what we decided to do, and it really, really paid off for me, right? But here's the caveat, right? Everybody is becoming a technology company now, which means that not only does Charles Schwab has to compete with the Fidelities and a JP Morgan Chase and Edward Jones and all of these other companies, they also had to compete with the startups, which the startups were largely the ones that spearheaded the zero trades. Remember Robinhood, remember all of these different companies. A lot of times they get swallowed up. Some of y'all have shown inside of the chat that you're paying attention a little bit, because, for example, you know that TD Ameritrade wound up selling all of their accounts over into Charles Schwab, right? But my point that I'm making with you guys is that there's always going to be change and influx in every single industry, including the financial sector, because technology is going to replace or take over a lot of the ways in which they generate revenue. So, for example, they can't generate revenue in the same way that they do from regular everyday people that have brokerage accounts that used to pay for every single trade, because of the technology companies then started to compete. And then they wanted to compete against the Robinhoods and things like that in order to have people trading on their platform, which is why you now have zero trades across the board, and people are able to trade for themselves instead of calling over into a brokerage account or calling over into a broker or calling into their financial advisor and saying, hey, I want to be able to make this trade, or I want to be able to, buy into this particular company for this amount, and this is how much it's going to cost you in fees in order to do so. Okay? Technology is changing everything when it comes to your ability to really be able to make money and for these companies to be able to compete. But let me continue. I don't want to go into the history real quick. I'm going to skip through that part.
Charles Schwab and Company was founded 50 years ago in 1973.
I want to skip past that part.
Charles Schwab eventually went beyond brokering.
Charles Schwab was an
Actually, I
early
wanna
adopter
skip
of
through that, too.
technology
Let me
from
move forward.
digitizing its back.
When startup trading apps like Robinhood entered the market with zero commissions in 2014, that was a huge deal. 5 years later, Schwab followed suit.
Charles Schwab out with a bombshell announcement today. It is slashing
But look at how long it took them to follow suit. 5 years later.
trading commissions for stocks.
And the reason that it took them so long is because they were generating so much revenue off of the fees that come with trading. How do banks make money? What are the main ways that banks make money? Does anybody know? The main way that banks make money is A, the fees, the servicing fees, and then B, the servicing your loan. A, the service fees, being able to charge you a fee for being able to provide a service, and then B, servicing your loan. What is servicing your loan? When you pay interest on whatever it is that you borrow from the bank, they then make money as a result of it. A lot of times banks even do a risk assessment of the type of loans that they're holding, and then they sell those loans over into another company. How many of y'all have had a mortgage? How many of y'all have had a mortgage and then you get a notice in the mail that says that your loan is now going to be serviced by X company over here, or Rocket Mortgage, and then it goes over to JP Morgan? Or you had a Bank of America loan and then it went over to something else, right? A lot of times they do a risk assessment, and this is one of the reasons why Rocket Mortgage, who was largely one of the biggest loan servicers and mortgage generators in the country, did not get left holding the bag during the mortgage crisis of the 2008 meltdown, is because they were generating so much money from generating loans and then moving those loans off of their books that a lot of these bigger firms got caught holding the bag. They got caught holding on to these bad loans. They were spending more time getting the fees from generating the loans and then moving the loans off of the books because they weren't trying to hold on to it. And then the bigger companies were saying, listen, we want y'all to generate the loans because it's easier for y'all to do so, but we want to make the money off of the interest that people are paying on those loans, off of those 30 years, off of those ARMs, off of those 15-year mortgages, off of those 10-year mortgages, right? And so the way that the banking industry operates is completely different from what your perspective is of how it is that they generate revenue, right? So when they do a risk assessment, or when another bank is making money as a result of the servicing of the loan, I'll give you another way in which banks make money, right? And then we're going to go ahead and get out of here because I do have to prepare for something else. Another way in which they make money is you may go online, right, and then be able to go on and pay your mortgage, or you managing your loan or your bank. If you go to Wells Fargo, I think that Wells Fargo has one of the worst online platforms for being able to actually service your loan. When you log in, it's a trash experience, the whole 9 yards. They need to go ahead and give me that bag in order to come over there and revamp what they got happening over there at Wells Fargo, okay? But when you go in, for example, right, and this is the third way in which banks make money, okay, the smart ones. The bigger banks are building platforms that allow for the smaller banks or other banks to be able to manage their assets under whatever it is that they're building. So, for example, we build a platform and then we service your mortgage with your logo on it and then put whatever aesthetic you want on that, right? And so you may come in and then you think that you buy or you're signing into your particular bank or your credit union or whoever it is that you're doing in order to be able to service your loan, right? The reality is that my bank that I've came in and revamped their user experience is now servicing your loan, and we get fees depending on the state of that loan. We make more money or less money as a result of it. So now your bank is paying my bank more money in order to actually manage with the system, the cloud infrastructure, you being able to go in and pay a loan. When y'all had to do mortgage forbearance, we made a whole lot of money as a result of it because we got more per loan per month to be able to actually manage that loan. We make way more money with less risk, actually being able to provide the technology behind how it is that you're making money. So banks are paying out money to different platforms in order to be able to service out their loans. That's the third way in which they make money. A lot of y'all didn't know that. But now you're learning something today, okay? What is the three ways in which banks primarily make money? Fees, interest off of your payments and loaning you money to actually get the mortgages and the loans and the credit cards that you have to service every single month. And then lastly, being able to manage the payment process behind how it is that you are giving them money. That's the three ways in which banks make money. And so the more accounts that they're able to swallow, which is one of the reasons why Charles Schwab then wanted for TD Ameritrade, or when you see JP Morgan Chase, they then swallow up another company, or when y'all seen that bank mortgage crisis, or not the mortgage crisis, but the banking crisis over there with Silicon Valley Bank, and then you seen JP Morgan or any of that other type of stuff, or when y'all see a Twitter, for example, and Elon Musk said, I'm putting together financing in order to buy Twitter. One bank or one institution don't provide the monies for that. You get a conglomerate of different banks sometimes even working together. You may get a Comerica Bank that's very heavy into asset management for retirement services, then tap over to JP Mortgage, or they may tap over to Charles Schwab and say, listen, I want to help provide the loan for what it is that they got going on Twitter, but I don't want to take on all of the risk. So then they bring in another bank in order to be able to do so, and then everybody makes money. So it's a competition, but it's also a hand-holding service for the things that they're trying to generate more revenue as a result of, because I can't do it by myself, but we can make money as a result together. But then I want to compete for you against the customers that's actually going to generate the most revenue, because the deposits then enable me to be able to loan out more money, to make more money as a result of it. It's one big intricate thing that's put together that continues to generate more revenue over and over and over again, that allows for us to be a servicing and debtor nation, because we don't build anything anymore. We just figure out how it is that we can make more money off the fees and the services. This is the money show. Ain't nobody fucking with us. Ain't nobody doing what it is that we do. Ain't nobody generating the revenue that we do. And ain't nobody making you pay for pops. You know what I'm saying?